Well. Bienvenue à chez nous. Welcome again to Take a Bite. Today we're about to take a bite off of physiology. A little bit of fundamentals about physiology is the opposite of pathology. You might have heard about pathology. Physiology is basically the healthy side of the unhealthy part of the studies, of how things work, the mechanism behind it. If you like to use your brain when it comes to the human body, well, this is your spot. Today we'll talk about body fluids and a little bit about homeostasis, but we want to do 5 points for sub 5 minutes, of course. Starting off, body fluids. Have you ever heard the saying, you are what you eat? Well, let me tell you, you are what you drink, because you are born about 75 to 80% water. And as you grow older, that percentage decreases a little bit as the water shifts from the extracellular to the intracellular, which I might make it sound like a negative thing, but on the positive side of things, that just means that the water is retained within the tissues, the muscles, the cells, rather than being in the outside, in the internal environment. So if you sweat, or if you exert yourself, or God forbid, you have a bout of diarrhea, you're less likely to go into shock or go into a state of dehydration. Second point, just for numbers' sake, as an adult, you have 60% water in your body. And do males or females have more water? Now remember, whenever you're studying science and biology, you always hear the term philic and phobic, hydrophilic, hydrophobic. So what's the most common macronutrient that hates so-called water? Fat. And the body composition of females tends to have a little bit more for reproductive purposes, and also for cushioning and for heat retention. We'll get into that later on, but females tend to have less water than males. And then third point, in the human body, I want you to think of all the tissues you might think of: the brain, the heart, the muscles, everything. The gray matter of the brain and the muscles usually retain the most amount of water, versus the dentine and the adipose, which retain far less. Dentine, adipose. Dentin is in the teeth. Therefore, in the teeth, you want to have the least amount of water because it's most rigid. Adipose, hydrophobic, while gray matter in the brain and muscles, which usually engages in a lot of phosphorylation and in other words, in a lot of breathing. When you breathe in, the whole purpose of delivery is water or oxygen that gets passed through these means. And water is the essence of life in that regard. Now, moving on to the standard, the golden standard. Think of a 70 kilogram, of course, not gram, male. 60% of that would give you what? 42. A good way of remembering this, and you can look it up. 42 is the answer to anything and everything. Look up on Wikipedia the number 42 in every single thing. And you find 42 is found in war, you found in ratios, found in everything. So it's no coincidence that 60%, which is our body weight percentage composed out of water, in a 70 kilogram male, gives you what? Gives you 42. Now, in the body, intracellular, extracellular. Within the cell, outside of the cell, it's still considered the internal environment. Most of the water as an adult, 40% out of that 60 is intracellular and 20% is extracellular. Therefore, out of the 20%, extracellular is divided into blood or plasma, which is very little, minute percentage of the extracellular. And then on the other side of things, interstitial fluid, which takes 16% of the extracellular. Now, extracellular fluid and intracellular fluid both have some sort of ions. There are positive ions and negative ions in order for you to maintain that seesaw or a little bit of a balance within the cell or outside of the cell. Extracellular, there is salt. Think of salt, sodium and chloride. Think of both of these. Sodium is the positive, and it comes with some numbers. We'll look into that later, or you can look them up. 143 or 142 MEQs, milliequivalents per liter. And then the anions is chlorine, a little bit less at 100. While intracellular, you get potassium. Well, obviously, if you're going to get sodium on the outside, you need the potassium. Remember the sodium-potassium pump? That's how you can remember it. And it pump kind of helps push against the flow in case the sodium goes into the cell. And you know, salt is not that good for the cell. It's good for a lot of other things, but in this scenario, it's not. It pumps it right out. And then that's why there's potassium and there is phosphate. Phosphate or proteins work as those negative ions that are found within the cell. So intracellular has more than extracellular amount of proteins that are found within the cell. While extracellular broken down into, remember what it was? Interstitial, within the tissue, and then plasma, the blood that is going in the extracellular. Interstitial has less than the plasma. So it goes protein intracellular, then extracellular, which is plasma and ISF. And that's it for blood fluids. Just remember the percentage. 60% of the body has water, 40% is intracellular, and 20% is extracellular. Within that, it's almost 16 and 4% for interstitial and plasma respectively. Thank you, folks.